You know that person who goes completely quiet when things get hard. Not cold, not distant on purpose, just gone. The texts slow down, the calls get shorter, plans get canceled with the kind of excuses that aren't quite lies, but aren't quite the whole truth either. And the strange part is, it's not that they don't care, it's that when the pressure hits a certain level, something in them just pulls the shutters down, retreats inward, and waits for the storm to pass alone. And no, you're not broken. You're not emotionally avoidant. You're not someone who doesn't know how to love people or be loved. What you are is someone whose nervous system learned a very specific lesson a very long time ago. That disappearing was sometimes the safest, smartest thing you could do. And that lesson saved you once. What this video is going to show you is what it costs you now, and why that response runs so much deeper than most people ever realize. There's a concept in neuroscience called the window of tolerance. It's the zone, emotionally, physiologically, where you can actually process what's happening to you, where you can think, feel, and respond. When stress pushes you outside that window, your brain doesn't decide to shut down, it just does. Researchers at the University of California studying stress and autonomic nervous system response found that for a significant subset of people, the dominant stress response isn't fight or flight, it's freeze and withdraw. The technical term is the dorsal vagal response, the oldest branch of the vagus nerve kicking in and essentially putting you into a kind of internal hibernation. In plain terms, your body's ancient wiring decides that disappearing is survival. Not a choice, not a character flaw, survival. There's also something called perceived social threat, which is what happens when your brain interprets being around people during stress as a drain rather than a resource. A 2018 study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology found that individuals with early experiences of inconsistent emotional support are significantly more likely to activate social withdrawal during high-stress periods, because connection was never reliably coded as safe. So your brain learned, when it's hard, go alone. And it's been running that program ever since. Number 1, you don't disappear because you don't care. You disappear because you care too much and have nowhere to put it. The observable behavior is this. When stress peaks, you stop reaching out. You stop responding. You go internal. And people on the outside sometimes read that as detachment, as coldness, when really what's happening is the exact opposite. You're flooded. You're carrying more than you can process out loud. And the idea of trying to translate that into words that someone else can handle feels genuinely impossible. The psychological term for this is emotional flooding, and what it does is temporarily shut down the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles language, social navigation, nuance. So you don't go quiet because you've checked out. You go quiet because the part of you that knows how to be present with other people has temporarily gone offline. And here's where it gets interesting. Number 2. The disappearing protects other people too, or at least that's part of the story you tell yourself. There's a specific kind of person who withdraws under stress not just to protect themselves, but because they genuinely don't want to be a burden. They've done the math, however unconsciously, and decided that their mess, their overwhelm, their bad days are too much to bring to someone else. So they handle it alone. They manage the ugly parts in private. They come back when they feel more like themselves again. The psychological mechanism here is called self-silencing, and it's been studied extensively in the context of interpersonal relationships. It's not the same as repression. It's a conscious or semi-conscious choice to keep the harder parts of yourself out of circulation because you've absorbed the belief, somewhere along the way, that full visibility is a liability. And here's the part nobody talks about. Number 3, the withdrawal gives you something, and that something is control. When everything external feels chaotic, silence becomes the one thing you can regulate. You can control who has access to you. You can control what information goes out. You can control the pace at which you have to engage with the world that is currently asking too much. Psychologists call this a secondary gain, the thing a behavior provides beyond its obvious function. The disappearing isn't just retreat, it's regulation. It's the body finding a way to turn down the volume when the input has exceeded what the system can process. The problem is that over time, it can start to feel like the only volume control you have, and the wiring gets reinforced. Every time you disappear and survive, the lesson deepens. Alone is safe, together is risk. But wait, it gets weirder. Number 4, people who do this are often the most present, most attuned people in the room, when they're not in crisis. Because the same sensitivity that makes stress so overwhelming is the same sensitivity that makes you extraordinary at reading a room, at noticing what people need, at being the person others come to when their world falls apart. The capacity and the cost are the same wire. Psychologists refer to this as high sensory processing sensitivity, a trait identified by researcher Dr. Elaine Aron that appears in roughly 15 to 20% of the population. Highly sensitive people absorb more emotional data, which means they're more connected and more easily overwhelmed. The disappearing isn't weakness, it's the system asking for what it needs. The only tragedy is when no one ever explained that. But there's a distinction worth making here. There's a difference between withdrawing because you genuinely need silence to process, and withdrawing because you've never learned to trust that anyone will stay if they see you overwhelmed. Ask yourself, are you disappearing because you need space to come back whole, or because some part of you is waiting to be left anyway and you'd rather control the exit? One is self-knowledge, the other is a wound wearing the mask of independence. Both are real, neither is shameful, but they call for different things, and only you know which one is true right now. This didn't start under stress at 28 or 32. It started when you were the kid who figured out that needing too much made things complicated, when emotional visibility created outcomes you couldn't predict and couldn't manage. Maybe the house had its own weather, and learning to disappear into your room, into your head, into a book, was how you kept yourself out of the storm. That wasn't pathology, that was intelligence. At 15, disappearing looked like going silent in arguments. At 25, it looks like not texting back for 3 days when work gets hard. Same root, different expression. The need behind it has shifted, but the shape of the response hasn't caught up yet. And here's what's true. The fact that you can see this pattern means you're already somewhere past it. Not free of it, not done with it, but the version of you who had no choice but to disappear is not the same person reading these words right now. Here's what I want you to sit with for a second. You have spent years making yourself smaller during the moments when you needed to be held most. You've carried entire storms alone because you didn't want to be too much. You've waited until you felt acceptable before letting anyone back in. And most people never saw any of it because you're very, very good at looking fine. That's not weakness. That's an exhausting kind of strength. The kind that asks nothing from anyone and quietly pays for everything itself. But here's the thing about people who disappear under stress. They're not gone. They're just somewhere no one's ever thought to look. You didn't learn to hide because you were broken. You learned to hide because no one ever made it safe enough to be found. If this one landed for you, the next video is going to go even deeper. We're looking at why people who struggle to ask for help often became the most reliable person in everyone else's life, and what that cost them. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe. The button is right there, and I mean it when I say the people who end up here are not here by accident. I'll see you in the next one.